Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name's Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. We're out of the Waisman Center in Madison, but we cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin, but our reach tends to extend throughout the state. So even if you are not part of one of those 14 counties, you are welcome here because we want to open up space so that parents can learn more and maybe have discussions about and with the professionals that are the champions for their children's care. And we know that one of the most important benefits that are out there are through the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver Program. And so we want to make sure people understand that program. We want to make sure they know how to connect to the program and keep up on what changes, because there's little tweaks and changes to the program every single year. And so we are excited that Jessica Holland and Lori Garceau are here, and she could correct me in a minute. And I might say, I believe you guys are back. I believe we have done this before. And so this is getting to be like, okay, this is the annual Children's Long-Term Support Waiver update for Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. I am so glad you guys are with us today. Thank you so much for taking time out to be here.
Thank you, Tim. I think we're both very happy to be here today. It's kind of cool because I start recognizing some names of people who are attending. So good morning to everyone. Well, actually, it's afternoon now. Wow, what happened to this morning? I'm Lori Garceau. I am a Children and Family Program Specialist for the Bureau of Children's Services. One of the programs we operate for the Department of Health Services is the Children's Long-Term Support Program. And I represent the south region of the state. So counties that I have, there's about 21 counties, and I go as far north and west as La Crosse and as far east and south as Kenosha and Racine counties. I'm gonna let Jessica introduce herself, and then we'll get into the meat of our presentation today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Holland. I'm a program and policy analyst with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and I work on the policy side of DHS, working to support the policy implementation that we do in the Children's Long-Term Support Program.
All right. And today we are going to be talking to you about some of the basics of the Children's Long-Term Support program and priorities for this coming year, as well as some of the accomplishments that we were able to achieve, some of the big ones that we were able to achieve in 2022. So a little bit about the CLTS program, and that's the next slide, Jessica. Thank you for running the slides. I have a hard time doing both at once. So the CLTS program provides supports and services that are in the community for children who are eligible, that have long-term support needs, and that is from birth through age 21. There's some nuances, and I'll get into that with youth who are 18 through 21, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But basically, eligibility includes being younger than age 22, provided that the youth is not eligible to transition to an adult long-term care program. And if they do, they would be expected to do so without delay. They need to be eligible for a full benefit category Medicaid program, meet an institutional level of care that's identified through a rigorous Children's Long-Term Support Functional Screen, and then reside in an eligible setting, which is in the community. Right, next slide. All right, so how do you apply? You would contact the county waiver agency in your county of residence. Let them know that you're interested in services to help your child with some kind of an identified long-term care need, and they'll walk you through and help you with the next steps. Work closely with that county waiver agency. Most often it is in the county Health and Human Services agency. And they will have someone called a support and service coordinator that will help complete that functional screen to determine functional eligibility and work you through all of the steps from there to help get your child enrolled. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica next to talk about a little bit more about the CLTS program itself.
Yeah, thanks. So Wisconsin CLTS program provides children with disabilities and their families those individualized supports and services that help children grow and ultimately live their best lives in the home and community. In the past, there has been a CLTS wait list, but now we have what's called a continuous enrollment process, which basically means we can get kids to join the CLTS program faster. So it means there's less wait time, faster program entry, and access to services and supports for kids and families who need them, and more families getting supports and services. And so we can offer this continuous enrollment because of some additional state funding and partnerships that DHS has with counties. In 2017, there were about 6,200 kids enrolled in CLTS. Today, we're approaching nearly 20,000. So we've seen just a tremendous amount of growth and increased ability to support kids to stay in their homes and communities. So our program is called the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver Program. You may have heard it referred to as just the CLTS program, the CLTS Waiver Program, or sometimes people even just call it the waiver. And you might have wondered, like, what even is a waiver and what does that mean? So a waiver allows Medicaid to fund additional services and supports that are not normally covered under kind of the regular Medicaid program. So a lot of times when people hear the word Medicaid, they think healthcare for people with lower incomes. And while that is true, but Medicaid is also, so much bigger and serves so many different types of people. And one of those types of people that Medicaid supports is children with disabilities. And these additional services and supports in the CLTS program go kind of above and beyond what we usually think of as Medicaid and traditional healthcare services to help children with disabilities stay in their homes and communities. So to be able to use Medicaid money to help kids stay in their homes and communities, Wisconsin has to get permission from the federal government to waive or get around certain Medicaid requirements about how that money can traditionally be spent. So we have to kind of waive the original rules. And so to get that permission, we at DHS have to submit what's called a waiver application that outlines the details of the program and what types of services and supports we want to offer and spend our money on. And that approval from the federal government allows us at the state to be kind of more creative and comprehensive than regular Medicaid and go above and beyond to fund these necessary services and supports that help kids stay in their homes or communities. So a waiver is, the place where the state details what services we want to offer, and the reason, it's also the reason why services might look different in other states. So if you know a family who has a child with a disability in another state, what that state can offer them, sometimes there's similarities and differences than what we can do in Wisconsin. And it all kind of goes back to how that state has kind of structured their program. So that's why we call it a waiver program. So Medicaid is that source of kind of traditional healthcare coverage, and it pays for things like regular healthcare checkups for children and youth, anything that's considered medically necessary, services and aids. So if it's determined that the child needs that service to treat an illness and an injury is medically necessary, that's covered through our traditional kind of Medicaid program. And CLTS says, okay, you have all your needs met through Medicaid or perhaps another private healthcare source. Now, how can we, as the CLTS program, support you and your family beyond just healthcare to help you stay and thrive in your community? So CLTS services include support services such as respite. It also has services that are around teaching and skill development, so things like daily living skills training. Also provides adaptive and communication aids such as vehicle modifications and housing related services like a home modification. There are a lot more examples of the different types of services available in the CLTS program, but hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor for kind of what Medicaid or kind of traditional healthcare pays for versus what we at CLTS are able to offer. So now I'll turn it back over to Lori for our next section.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. So when your child enrolls in the CLTS program, you're going to be working with a team of people, and that team includes you, includes the child, includes caregivers and other people you may want to have involved, includes your county waiver agency, and then service providers that that are identified and work with you. That team is identified on the child's individualized service plan. That individualized service plan is reviewed at least twice a year and every 6 months, but it can be reviewed at other times when you've identified that maybe there's some things that are missing that could help keep your child safe and in the community. I'm going to go to the next slide, Jessica. So the one of the key people to help you and to just help you even understand that meeting what your needs, needs you've identified to, what supports and services might be available, is your support and service coordinator. We often call them the SSC. Some people call it a case manager. And that support and service coordinator is so integral to help partner with you in your journey and help support and navigate not just CLTS services, but also other community services that are available to help you and your family. They are going to be they would reach out to you at least every 6 months. And again, they can connect more frequently if you need that. And also they're every month, they're at least coordinating with other providers and other supports that you have identified on your service plan. I'm going to move to the next slide and just talk about deciding together. A lot of folks have heard about that buzzword, those buzzwords, deciding together. And what it is a team approach to help find the right supports and the services that you and your child need to remain in the community. So team members will use that deciding together to learn more about your child and your family and how best support the identified needs that you have. All of those decisions about your child's supports and services are based on your family's and your child's unique needs and goals. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not going to be, well, I know my friend has these services. It's going to be services that are identified to meet your specific needs. And that can be through a variety of programs, not just the CLTS waiver program. We got a couple of links there, which I think I've seen Tim posting some links, so I'm guessing he'll also post those. One is just a deciding together guide, and another is what it is and what it is not. So that's something just to use in the future if you want, and that's something that the support and service coordinator will also usually brings out to your home and when they're having that discussion with you. All right, next slide. Thank you. So Jessica referred to some of the services that are offered through the CLTS waiver program, and those are services that have been approved by the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services as waivers to general Medicaid services. We have a publication that's called Supports and Services at a Glance that are a kind of a high level understanding of the supports and services specific to the CLTS program that are available to help you. All right, and next slide. Thank you. All right, so there's a couple of really big things that we did in 2022, and one of those super heavy lifts was implementing a new waiver that was approved in the end of 2021. Hats off to Jessica, because that was a large amount of work on her part to write and get that revised waiver approved. It did include new services for families, and that information, those services again can be found on that supports and services at a glance. We've worked a lot on helping with transitions, because we know that's a difficult time in life for families to move from working with your support and service coordinator in your county waiver agency for maybe 18 years and moving to an adult waiver program that might be a little bit different in that it's geared toward helping to support needs that are more focused on adulthood. So there's been more guidance on that. There's been a lot of work in 2022. We worked really hard with adult programs and with the ADRCs to help look at how we are supporting you in that transition time. So it was one of the things that we had identified as an area for growth and improvement, and hopefully we've nailed it with all of the work we've done this last year. The other big thing is that we've served nearly 7,000 new children and what we call net new, 4,000 net new kids. So about 3,000 of those 3,000 kids may have transitioned to an adult program, but we've grown still by another 4,000 kids in 2022. And I think I go to the next slide, right? Okay. Am I still here? Yes, I am. Okay. All right. So in 2023, some of the things that are keeping us busy are what the federal government calls unwinding from the public health emergency. So if you're keeping up on the news, late in December, the president signed the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which meant that we needed to start looking at eligibility redeterminations for all of our programs, and that includes any of the Medicaid programs. So Badger Care, Katie Beckett Medicaid, Children's Long-Term Support Waiver, all of those need re-eligibility determinations, and those we're going to start that process beginning in June. So you'll be getting letters from folks saying, hey, this is what's happening, and then you'll get another letter closer to when it's your time to re-enroll in programs. So stay tuned for that and be watching for the mail. But even looking at some of the flexibilities that were afforded to us during the pandemic, because now the president has indicated that he's ending the federal public health emergency as of May 11th. And so we have from May 11th until November 10th to unwind those temporary flexibilities. So some of those are already things that we've been able to put in permanent policy. Other things may be a change for some families, such as parents being paid as caregivers. That must end by November 10th. We've also been exploring new ways to help families and find and get resources, kind of a one-stop shop after they learn that their child has a delay or a disability or a special health care need. We realize that it's kind of a maze out there, and we want to be able to work together as one big organization of helping professionals to get you the right information at the right time and not make you jump through hoops. So that's a huge project, an access project that a bunch of folks have been working on, including even some pediatricians and a lot of folks from lots of other departments in the state of Wisconsin. Families have been on this work group. It's been a pretty cool work group from what I understand. We've updated, or we're updating materials to support the training that our SSCs need in order to do the good work that they do with you. And so that is actually one of Jessica's projects for 2023. And then there's obviously more, but those are the big ones that I think are going to be affecting you the most. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jessica.
Great. Thanks. So, 2022 was a huge year. 2023 will be, a big year as well for the program. But we want to provide some information, about the CLTS program. And like Tim said, we'll share the slides afterwards, but we wanted to share, I think Tim put in the chat, the CLTS family webpage, and make sure you know about our All In for Kids family newsletter that you can sign up for to receive more information about the CLTS program. But that is the information that we have to share with you today, but we're happy to answer any questions or dig deeper on any of the topics that we discussed here today. So I will pause there and turn it back over to Tim or others if there's additional questions.
Well, fantastic. And of course, you guys know that I have questions, and that's going to give time for people to get questions into the chat box, or you can unmute, and I will do my best to notice that you have unmuted. I'm just wondering, I was tooling through the website as you were talking because it's what I do. Is there specific information when you were talking about enhancing transition and making for a smoother transition? Were you looking at, was that internal work that you were doing between like CLTS to the adult long-term providers to the ADRC? Are there things that families need to know? And where could we find that information about that transition?
So yes, Tim, all of the work was internal. Certainly had some conversations with some of our advocacy experts. Most notably, I'm thinking of Family Voices, because they have an abundance of information about transitions on their webpage, and really, really helpful information. So we wanted to make sure we weren't duplicating something that was already there, but it was focusing inward to say, how can we work together more? How can we collaborate more? What things do we need to put in place when, to make us collaborate when we don't feel like we want to, so that we can help a family move from point A to point B without feeling like they're lost, without feeling like they don't know what's happening, that they feel supported through that whole transition time. So yes, it was probably long overdue, right? And hopefully a noticeable change, especially as we now hit, some of the unwinding from that federal public health emergency.
So what should a family, if they have a child on children's long-term support waiver and they're receiving support like that, what do they need to know as their child approaches 18? Will their case manager contact them? Do they need to contact the ADRC? Who's sort of driving that bus?
Yeah, so at 17 and a half, it is the responsibility of the support and service coordinator, that's SSC, to make the referral to the county, the ADRC in that county of residence. And then to start, the ADRC will reach out to the family. They need to complete an adult long-term care functional screen. It's a little bit different than the children's long-term care functional screen. So they'll be completing that, determining eligibility, and working with you and working with the support and service coordinator to help with that enrollment. In the past, there was more of a hands-off approach, and we're saying, work together, help each other out, help identify, there might be some unique needs and reasons why you might be hesitating to enroll in one program or another. So let's just figure this out together, so that nobody's feeling caught off guard when they transition at 18.
Yeah, and I think, another thing about transitions that we've tried to be a little bit more intentional about recently is there's both the like literal transition from one program to another, but there's also lots of preparatory conversations that go into that should be happening much earlier than when you hit 17 and a half. Some of those conversations about decision making and kind of envisioning that transition as any youth would. Those conversations should be happening much earlier than that actual programmatic transition as well. So I think we've been bringing some more kind of intentionality and expectation setting for when kind of those earlier kind of planning oriented transition conversations should be happening as well.
I didn't mention it, and Jessica, you just made me think about it. Even, a child's interest in career or, secondary education post high school, or is that called secondary college? Basically, what does that look like for them? The messages to start working and partner with the schools, partner with the Department of Vocational Rehab to help early work toward those goals, so that when a child is approaching and closely approaching adulthood, that they have a plan. They've got something mapped out for them, so that they feel more confident about their future.
So I would like to invite people to feel free. You can use the raise your hand feature, which is at the bottom of your screen under reactions. You can also put your questions in the chat. I'll be more than happy to relay them to Lori and Jessica. And in the process of typing in, please raise your hand. I lost my next question. It just sort of went somewhere else. And it was like the best question ever. I will let you guys know.
I'm sure it was. I can address, I saw Katie put in the chat that she, wishes that some of this information was in kind of in a doctor's office or more easily accessible, and wanted to share a little bit about some of the exciting work that we're doing to maybe hopefully make that a reality. So, we know that this kind of beginning of a journey after learning a child has a delay, disability, or special need can be, really complex. And so one of the things that we're working on this year is a branding and marketing campaign to raise awareness about the supports and services available in Wisconsin, to really help improve that time in a family's journey. And so I think, over the next year or two particularly, you'll see some particular emphasis on making sure that families are aware of the supports and services that are here to help them, to programs, services to help them navigate, all of those things. So that's another area that we really hope to make some significant progress on in the next few years, especially kind of kicking off this year. So there's some exciting work to kind of build those relationships with those professionals and people who refer to our programs, as well as kind of just generally increasing the public awareness about these services and supports across the state.
Katie, I know this.
Tim, go ahead.
No, Katie, I was just going to say, Katie, what do you want to say?
Oh, well, I was going to say, like Tim's question, I wondered if you are or have worked with families. I know, and this might have been part of that outreach. I did a little focus group for public health, I think it was this winter. And you can imagine I love a focus group, because boy, do I love to talk about my opinions on things. And we identified, just some of the populations that fall through the cracks. I think I know working in healthcare, we love to do everything on my chart these days, but yet a lot of the times we're targeting shingle shots for the elderly, and yet we know that my chart is not their preferred means of communication or receiving information, or in my experience being homeschoolers, I felt like we really slipped through the cracks because it was like a lot of things I think medical people assumed we would be getting through the school district, and we weren't, and no one was asking, and I didn't know how to ask about what I didn't know we weren't getting because we didn't know we should be getting it, kind of a thing. And so I just wondered if you have or are soliciting that feedback, you know, in like different languages, or, you know, just we have a lot of cultures in this area.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. We actually did that in 2022. We had several focused meetings for, I think there were about a series of 5 or 6 of them to get feedback from families, from providers. How can we basically just find out how we can do better, how we can make sure that what we think we're doing is what we are doing, and if not, which we found out we all could improve somewhere. And so what do we do? How do we make that better for all families from 0 to through 21? So yeah, thank you. That was a really cool experience for us to do, and very humbling as well.
Yeah, and then in terms of kind of this newer initiative of really helping, families find their right next step after, learning that their child has a special healthcare need, we had an advisory committee that really helped build out some of that initial work, and families and individuals with lived experience were on that committee and really helped contribute in meaningful ways to kind of the visioning and the building out of a lot of that work. And we've continued through that work for the branding and marketing piece to engage with families. We had some focus groups that will help inform kind of the branding and marketing work, as well as some surveys that went out to families that we had just an incredible response on, as well as from professionals to help inform that work and make sure that, we're reaching the right audience through the ways that they prefer to receive information, and really creating those targeted marketing strategies to better reach families and professionals to get them the information they need to best support families.
And I noticed there is a comment in chat about helping to find some options for summer. So summer camps or summer respite. Someone who is on the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver, where can they go to try to find help for that?
Yeah, so your support and service coordinator is your key person, and they are the ones who help explore resources. It might be, not all services are necessarily covered, are services that need to be covered by the CLTS program, but your case manager is there to help you through all services and help your child because they do qualify for this Medicaid program, and case management is that one of those key pieces to help identify resources. Easter Seals is often commonly used, but there's many other camps and that families do use. And when a support and service coordinator isn't sure, they reach out to their team. They reach out to their agency lead. Each agency has a waiver program lead, and then that lead person also reaches out to us at the state for ideas when they're looking for them. So
I have a question about with what you were just saying, Lori, is there's going to be times where we don't get along with everybody in our little world, with everybody that we interact with. And there may be a time where, even though you're working on the deciding together, and that's a fantastic step to bringing the case managers and the families onto the same page, using the same language. What are the resources for a family if they're like in some county that they don't have a clue who Lori Garsaw or Jessica Holland is, or how this program actually works? They have this one point of contact and they're not getting along with that one point of contact, and they seem to be stuck. Is there anything that parents can do?
Absolutely. They can certainly reach out to that county waiver agency's lead to have a conversation with them. It might be, that sometimes it's just a minor difference of opinion that maybe a little coaching from that to that support and service coordinator, and things are right on the right path, that would be, an easy solution. There, we know that agencies have been serving more and more children, and finding qualified employees is not just a isolated issue. And so, county waiver agency leads will do the best they can with matching someone to meet your needs. And, they can, sometimes they have to get really creative about how they can help support you when it seems like there is no solution within that waiver agency. They do have some options. It's just, these are kind of different times right now. Encourage you to be open, be, discussing, and try to resolve together. But always, if you feel like you need to take that next step, please do so.
I just put a resource in the chat about contacts for the CLTS program and information about kind of who each person is, how they can help, and more information on filing a grievance or appeal as well. Those are those kind of formal ways that we would like folks to engage, to express those needs, and then work with folks at the state, if need be, to bring some resolution to some of those disagreements and conflicts.
So do you guys
Thanks.
know any of the options with long-term support for families who, like, their children need that extra support in the community? Is there a benefit from long-term support, barring if knowing that we're having trouble hiring people across the board? But is there a way for families to ask for that sort of community support for their child out in the community?
I'm sure parents will know. Networking is a great resource. And there's no better resource than children and youth with special health care needs. You have lots of community resources at our fingertips. It's just, accessing those. And, I think of a lot of families who are looking for some additional supports and services, and they reach out to maybe their religious community and that faith family that they have to help. So it's the possibilities are endless. I think it's thinking creatively, thinking openly, and not ruling things out right away, right? And Tim, you probably have some ideas, right? Because I'm thinking about, your program and how you help navigate some of those uncharted waters for families. So,
and that's one of the things that, I did put in, is that we do have the 5 regional centers for children and youth with special health care needs across Wisconsin, and they are there to help brainstorm with parents when the formal supports aren't available and when their family is already overwhelmed with what's going on. What are maybe some of those other supports, formal or informal, that may be available? We can help brainstorm. We, of course, cannot make things appear as much as we would like to. There are still needs that are out there that cannot be addressed through Medicaid, that cannot be addressed through the waiver program because of the restrictions that are placed on those programs, and they may not be available to all parents. And that's wrong. That shouldn't be as part of the system, but it does exist. And so then we can talk with families about, well, how's the closest we can get? Maybe what else could we do if we're not going to be able to get that thing that you really need? And we agree you need it. It just doesn't exist out there. What else can we do to work around that?
Yeah, I would say, just be open to creative thought and ideas, and, consider. I think sometimes and I even get myself stuck in that, where I think this is exactly what I need and nothing else is going to do. But I can't afford that. And then I realize, well, this would work. or these couple of things together are more cost effective and they work for me and they meet that need. It's just, I think we have to just be open to possibilities. So.
Well, and that goes along with what you guys were kind of saying before, that you have these times of transition. But what we're talking about is dreaming with your child through all their ages and what their needs are, what their dreams are, what their wishes are, and using the supports that are out there to help them achieve those dreams, those goals, their safety. And children's long-term support is part of the programs, one of the programs that's part of the system to help get the children to reach their dreams. So thank you both for being here. Really do appreciate it. Thank you for permission to record, and thank you for sending the PowerPoint. I'm sure this will be most watched as well. If people get a chance, I did put a feedback survey out there, but I appreciate your time and for not using too much jargon. You guys are getting really good at being able to talk to families. I appreciate that.
Thanks for inviting us, Tim. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Good. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.